Good morning and welcome to the Mrs. R Relevant Daily Draft Podcast brought to you by the Draft Professors. Joined this fine Sunday morning from Brian Maffey, bright and early from the West Coast.
Yep.
Brian, good morning to you.
Morning.
Happy Sunday. How are you doing?
Just woke up 20 minutes ago, so still trying to get the sleep out of my eyes, so to speak. But yeah, doing all right.
I can see the sun shining behind you, unless that's a light.
That's a light.
So, yeah. Oh,
yeah,
okay.
Because the sun's not even out here yet, so the sun is still asleep.
Yeah, and Jack Bretnall couldn't be here today. Drew couldn't be here today. The whole college student Thanksgiving holiday thing probably has Drew out this week and next week.
Yeah.
But we're here to discuss some defensive linemen in the NFL draft. Brian, before I go through and list all the players, what did you think of this defensive line group as a whole?
It's how I put it. It's an interesting group. I mean, this whole defensive line class this year is kind of interesting. There's still some guys with that need a lot of projection. Still need a lot of work, but the talent's there. And then there's other guys who, aren't super talented. And they're kind of like, what's the word? They've kind of maxed themselves out, so to speak. So they're like later picks. So it's like, it's like a good mix, I think.
Yep. And I would agree. Like sometimes when I put a group together, it's a group that I would just call mid. I think most of these guys are probably day 3, if they're drafted at all. The channel's covered most of them before. But at the same time, one of the things I love about podcasting with you is that you definitely have a more conservative grading, I think, than most. And I definitely like hearing that conservative approach to your grading. So the players we're going to go through are Ahmad Moten from Miami. Shout out to Randall Slifer. He's the first one that mentioned Ahmad Moten within the Draft Professors. Damonic Williams from Oklahoma. Renee Conga from Louisville. Those are the defensive tackles today. Caden Curry from Ohio State. Logan Fano from Utah. Tre Smith from Arizona. Clayton Smith from Arizona State. Quincy Rhodes from Arkansas. And then we're going to close out today's show with Jayshon Barham from Michigan, which will be the first time the channel has covered Barham this draft cycle. So let's start with Ahmad Moten. What did you think from the Miami defensive tackle?
Yeah, I like his film. I know everybody, of course, I think he doesn't get talked about as much because everybody focuses on his teammate. Some people obviously have differing views on him, but he's the less talked about guy. Although he's pretty good. Obviously, he's different. He's more of an interior guy, but yeah. And this is his first year as a starter, so I think he hasn't gotten as much hype. So I don't have official numbers on him, but they list him at 6'3", 300 this year. But since he's been in my database for a couple of years, I remember last year they had him listed at like 320 something. I want to say maybe 324, something around there. And he does look like he's slimmed down a little bit this year, and I think it's actually helped him a lot. He does look a little bit more quicker, a little bit faster, a little more explosive and stuff like that. So I think that's good for him too, especially what he's going to be asked to do in the NFL. Well, yeah, like I said, this is his first year as a starter. He's got a good muscular build. He shows, even though he's lost some weight, he's got some decent pop in his hands. A few times he even knocked back some blockers. He's got good quickness. He can throw inside-outside fakes at them. He'll play through the whistle. He'll even trace plays down all the way across the field. So he moves pretty well. He can really find the ball in the run game. He does a good job of finding the ball. And he shows some flashes of some pretty impressive instincts at times. He'll use the bull rush and get some decent movement on it. He's not like a freaky bull rush guy, but he's pretty good at it. It could get better, but he's got some movement on that. I think for that to improve it, I think if he added like a counter or like string some moves to it. I think that could really take his pass rush game up a notch as well. And but yeah, he's got good explosiveness. He'll even sometimes he's so quick he'll beat some blockers to their spots off the snap and get into the backfield and cause some havoc back there. His finishing though needs some work. He'll miss like tackling the running back in the backfield or the quarterback. He'll come in a little out of control. So he needs to work on that as well, of course. But he'll hold his ground in the run game, and he continues to work to try and work on the blocker and get off the blocker. I saw a couple times there was like a, what do you call it? A little bit of hesitation in him, just recognizing what's going on and seeing what's in front of him. Of course, I think it's partially due to just being a one-year starter. It's an experience thing. He'll get better at that. But again, that's just still something I noticed on film. They've even played him at times on the edge, and it was pretty impressive, actually, the plays. It's not something obviously he's going to do in the NFL long term or any sort of like consistent way or anything like that, because he's not really an edge rusher. He doesn't have the speed and athleticism for it per se. But he did look impressive on it as far as he bullied back the tackles a couple times on some speed to powers, just really knocked him back. It was, like I said, it was pretty impressive. So at least I think in the NFL it adds some versatility where you could use him as on the defensive end at times. Probably more on like short yardage downs and stuff like that, and maybe on an occasional pass down, like maybe on occasional like a NASCAR package or something if somebody wants to get those things weird out there. But he will use some half man and stuff and then keep contained in the run game. He's even been able to cross face and jump some gaps and stuff like that. But like I said, his football intelligence is improving. There was like a specific play I saw where there was a couple screens. He was a little late to recognize screens a couple times. He could stack and shed in the run game though. And blockers sometimes will take him and just use his momentum against him. So like being able to like counter and realize what they're doing and work back, I think it's something he's going to need to work on as well. But I could see him going back to school for another year just to develop himself as a pass rusher more and just getting that experience, because since again, like I said, he's only a 1-year starter. But if he were to come out this year, I could see him as a late day 2, early day 3 guy, depending on, of course, workouts, interviews, stuff like that. What teams get from him like that?
Yeah, so I definitely I like what you had to say. And your report on Moten sounds really similar. This is the third time that we've covered him. The whole late day 2, early day 3 seems to be like somewhere between 75 and 125 on the board. So I like what you had to say. Now, I pulled the 6'3", 324 off of PFF. I double checked it while you were talking. PFF still has him listed at 324, and you think he's slimmed down from that significantly?
Well, yeah, from the official Miami site, they have him at 6'3", 300.
Okay.
Yeah, and like I said, he's been in my database since I think last year or the year before. He's just a redshirt junior, like I said. And I remember like updating his weight this year, and they had it. I remember his weight before. Like I said, I want to say like 320, 324, something like that, like you said. But yeah, they list him at 300 pounds, and he does look like a little bit slimmer now. So I think, he did lose a little bit of weight.
Okay. Damonic Williams, defensive tackle from Oklahoma. What did you think of it?
Yeah, on our guys here, my list are slightly out of order, so it takes me a second to find them real quick because I had them in different order for some reason. So Damonic Williams, Oklahoma. He started out at TCU, and he's actually been a 4-year starter, so he's got a lot of experience. So obviously teams will like that. Official measurements we have on him is 6'1" and 3/8, 320 with 33-inch arms. So he's got nose tackle size. He's got good broad shoulders and good length, of course, and the good length shows up in film. In the run game, though, he'll set a solid base, but he still will get pushed out of his gap and get turns at times. And he gets pushed around a little bit more than you like, especially for a guy his size and a guy that's kind of a nose tackle. He's not like obviously a Ted Washington type of nose tackle or anything like that, but he's still more of a nose tackle than like a 3 tech say. But He still can push around a little more than you'd like for a guy his size, especially a 4-year starter. But Oklahoma does use him up and down the line a little bit. They'll use him at 0 tech, 1 tech, 2 tech. They'll even use him at 5 tech sometimes, which obviously, again, another thing that's good for a guy who's not going to be a first-round pick or anything like that. Adding the versatility is always good. He's not completely stiff for a nose tackle. A lot of nose tackles, especially big guys who just shut down and run, are pretty stiff. He's not that stiff. He'll use a rip, but it's not really that effective. He's got a nice swim move that he uses in the run game. And but he has shown flashes of being able to hold his gap, of course, and playing some half man and stuff like that. He's got some decent mobility. He can move and work his way down the line, of course. I mean, I think that's why they move him around a little bit. But he's unlikely to be able to chase plays down like all the way down to the sideline. He can move and down, back and forth a little bit between like in the tackle box, but he doesn't really have the athleticism, I would say, to get all the way to the outside to the line and whatever. But he can he does show some sacking shedding ability on film, but it's a bit inconsistent. His speed and explosiveness are probably average, maybe even a little bit below average. I think if he wants to get that up, he'll probably have to lose a little bit of weight, although he doesn't look like he's in bad shape or anything. But he does show some flashes of being able to time the snaps. He'll take a good angles to the ball. He can play some half man, but still has trouble in disengaging from offensive linemen. But he does keep his leg and his feet working. But like I said, he'll lose leverage during snaps. Sometimes he'll let blockers get into his chest too often. If he gets double teamed, they're like completely riding him out of his gap usually. Not like down the field and on the floor or anything, but they're taking him out of his gap, and he's losing that rep there basically. And then he's showing occasional flashes though, being able to disengage in the run game, like and making plays on the ball. He doesn't show much production in the pass game, so he needs to improve his anchor and his consistency to make the NFL. I have a mid to late day 3 pick on him. I think he really needs to kind of figure out what he wants to do. If he wants to stay a nose tackle, he's got to figure that out. Or if he wants to try and be more of a 2-eye, 3 tech, something like that. If he wants to make some changes to his body and stuff in plays and different stuff, I think it's what he kind of needs to figure out what he wants to do.
Okay. And then the last defensive tackle that we're going to cover today, Rene Conga from Louisville. PFF had him at 6'4", 300. What measurements do you have, and what do you have to say about Rene Conga?
Yeah, let me find him real quick. Just going off my memory real quick. I know he's gotten some hype recently, especially by James Foster. James Foster really likes him. He talks about him pretty often on his podcast with Corey Kinnan. There he is. Okay. So interesting player, actually, some like his background stuff is pretty interesting. Real quick on the verifieds, though, of course, 6'3" and 1/8, 299. He is a 6-year guy, but he's got 33-inch arms. So even though he's a little bit shorter, squattier type body, he's got long arms. But like I said, some interesting background. He originally started at Rutgers, transferred over to Louisville. I believe it was 2 years ago he transferred over. And he's actually originally from Canada, so there's a Canadian player there for our friend Jamal. He can another interesting thing about his background, he actually can long snap. So that's obviously something that could add some value to the NFL, that teams could look at him. He can actually long snap. So he could. I'm not sure exactly how good he is at it, because obviously nobody really watches special teams film, but I do know he can long snap. Looking at his background and stuff like that. So but at least he's decent at it or good at it. I think that could save an NFL team a roster spot. But this year actually is his first year as a starter. So 6-year guy, but this is his first year starter. He played rotations, of course. He wasn't like a guy that didn't play or anything, but this is his first year as a true starter. He did have 5 starts last year in 24, but again, this is his first year as a starter. But yeah, despite being a little bit of a squatty guy, he's got kind of a long build with like a long, thin build in a way, with very little fat on his body. He's played up and down the line. He's played all the way from 0 tech to 5 tech, so they move him around a lot. His frame looks pretty filled out for the most part, with not much room for more added bulk. I'd say at max he could maybe add 5 pounds if he wanted to, but I don't think he really needs to. But as a player, he flashes a quick arm over with a club. He has a nice closing burst into the backfield. Has some explosiveness. His length does show up in the passing game. But I think in the run game, he could use it a bit more. Sometimes he kind of just goes chest to chest with his blocker and tries to use his shoulder and stuff like that. I think using his length would help him more. So because I think he needs to be a little more physical with blockers in the run game. Especially, I noticed something weird on film was if you'd have a puller or like a fullback or a tight end, sometimes pulling around and coming at him, he would just kind of throw his shoulder into them. And then when you're doing that, like, yeah, you're kind of stopping the guy's momentum, but you're not able to make any sort of play or anything like that. So I think being able to just use his hands more and, play half man with them or use some sort of pass rush move to get past them or something like that, I think he'd be able to be more effective against pullers and stuff like that, or fullbacks, tight ends, H-backs, what have you. Overall, his hands are okay. I don't think his block deconstruction is good enough. It needs to improve. His anchor in the run game is not great. I think that's partially due to his size, but I think he can still improve it just because he's shorter. He should have some naturally good leverage. His lower body does lack some bulk. Does lack the bulk to play nose tackle, I should say. So I think his play, even though he does play some nose tackle for Louisville, I don't think NFL teams are really going to use him as nose tackle unless again it's like a third and long type of situation or something like that. I think he's going to play more, two wide, three tech, stuff like that. But, he's always giving effort. He does flash some strong hands and upper body strength. A few times I've seen him he torqued some guards here and there, torqued their upper bodies, but it's not consistent. Of course, needs to improve. He does seem to have a nose for the ball. He's able to find the ball well and usually around it. He shows flashes of being able to cross face and ability to shoot gaps. He does try to bull rush occasionally and get some movement, but not a lot against, again, he's just under 300 pounds. So I think it's not usually guys that are sub 300 aren't really getting a lot of movement with bull rushes. But, his shoulders will get over his feet sometimes in the run game and blockers will like push pull him and stuff like that and use the momentum against him. He doesn't hold up very well against double teams. He'll get pushed around. But there are times when they did use him as like a 5-tech kind of like edge rusher. He did use the speed to power on those tackles, and he got a good push with those. So I think that's something he can maybe see if he can incorporate is a defensive tackle, especially if they use him as a TT stunt. They like loop him and stuff like that. I think he could do that. But he does have, I termed in my notes, he has some jets in his shoes. He can jump pretty high in passing lanes. But his change of direction is kind of average. His pad level doesn't get too high, so he doesn't have too much of an issue with leverage. He does need to develop some counters and string some moves together. I think that'll help him a lot. But I think he's best suited for like a rotational role and like a one gap type scheme in the NFL. So that's like an early to mid day 3 player.
Got it. Well, thank you for Renee Conga.
Yeah.
Caden Curry had a pretty good game yesterday.
He did.
Ohio State against Rutgers. 6'3", 260 pounds is what I pulled off of PFF. What do you have on the Ohio State edge?
Yeah, I like Caden Curry's film. I didn't watch last night, of course, but I saw he did have 2 sacks. He's an interesting player. He's a player I like. He's interesting. He's kind of like your old school typical Ohio State edge rusher. Big strong dude. He's a redshirt senior, I believe, or true senior. I can't remember offhand. Don't have that in my notes here real quick. I know this is my database, but I think he's a true senior. Like you said, 6'3", 260, so no official numbers, no verified numbers, I mean. This year is actually his first year as a starter. His first 2 years at Ohio State, he barely played, but of course, it's partially because it's Ohio State has huge, crazy depth at edge rusher for a long time. So I think that's part of the reason, one of the main reasons why he really didn't play much his first couple of years. It's just there's so many guys they had, he didn't play much. I think if I remember, 2024 was the first year he played like a decent amount. Excuse me. But yes, for the film, he's got muscular build. He's got well-defined arms. His length looks to be about average-ish for edge rusher. Like I would guess around 33, maybe just under, just over, in that range. He's got a strong upper body. He can hold the point of attack in the run game. He'll play half man. He can find the ball. I saw an interesting something that's kind of funny on the film was he was coming up the field in the backfield, and as a running back was trying to block him, and he used a swim move on the running back, but that was kind of funny. Because you don't see that too often. Usually if the running back's trying to block an edge rusher, they'll just kind of just try and chuck him or run him over or whatever. But he actually used a pass rush on him. That was kind of funny. but he shows patience in run game. He can definitely hold his gap. He's got active feet. He's always moving them. He'll when then fullbacks try and take him on, he'll just take him on. He'll just chuck him. Like fullbacks can't have trouble blocking him. And then he would like to see him get off you would like to see him get off them a little bit quicker, dispose of them a little quicker. But he does show he can do it. He just needs. I think he needs to do it a little bit quicker. He shows flashes of a nice push-pull move. He tries a rip move, but it looks a little weird and robotic. Looks a little off. I think it needs some work. And I think if he used the speed to power and then did his rip, I think that would add some potential to his pass rush game. He uses a stutter step, but the way his feet are, they're a little off. He's a little too short and his feet a little too far together when he's doing it, so it looks a little weird. It's not really, nobody's going to fall for it. If your feet are so far together and you're going like nobody's going to fall for it. So he needs to kind of spread them out a little bit, space it out, and add a little bit to that. Occasionally he would try to rush up the arc, but he doesn't do it as much. I think he needs to do that a little more just to add some variety to his pass rush game and then throw some blockers off. He's a physical run defender. They even played him a few snaps on the inside, and he was okay at it. I wouldn't, again, it's not something I wouldn't say as a strength in the scouting report per se, but it's something he can do occasionally. Again, like kind of like if you want to use him as maybe some sort of NASCAR package type thing. But his bull rush does get some good movement on this and on some movement. His pass rush game is still a bit on the raw side. I think, again, that's partially because of the lack of playing time early in his career and this being his first year as a starter. But he does, and when he's trying to pass rush, he mostly tries to run through offensive tackle's face, basically. He doesn't use his length as much as he should, even though, again, like I said, he's not super long, but he's got some decent length. But he does drive hard. He keeps working. He will get stuck on blockers at times when they get a good grip on him. And he doesn't seem to know what to do when that happens. He kind of gets stuck. Like he's not sure, like he hasn't learned how to do counters basically and trying to like block deconstruction and stuff like that. That's something he's going to need to work on. But his explosiveness is okay. I think he has a decent floor at the very least, he's going to be a solid and edge rusher that can will defend the run for you. But I do think he's in like a mid-day 3 pick that he does have some developmental upside. I think that, like I said, he can come in as a rookie and just be a good run defender and then maybe potentially develop as a pass rusher, like I said, just because he's just a 1-year starter.
Yeah. So how do you compare Caden Curry to teammate Jack Sawyer, who was drafted last year?
Trying to remember. They're somewhat similar in that just that they're big power guys. But I think Curry has some better length. And if I remember right, Sawyer was like a 3-year starter or something like that. So I think,
right,
like I said, I think they're somewhat similar, but I think Curry has a little bit more upside, but wasn't as developed as Sawyer, if that makes sense, or he didn't have as much experience.
It does, yes.
Yeah, but he doesn't have much experience. Yeah.
So as you were explaining him, and I'm listening to you, I'm thinking Brian's going to grade him really similar to where Jack Sawyer was drafted, right? Because Jack Sawyer, I believe, was early day 3 last year.
Yeah. Somewhat similar. Right? Yeah. Like I said, yeah. Even though Curry has a decent floor, I think his floor is a little bit lower than Sawyer's, but he's got a little bit more of an upside. So,
right. And that's kind of what I heard you say the first time you went through it, right? But in my head, and again, scouting the helmet, right? But teams like a certain type of edge rusher, and there's a reason why a player like Arvell Reese can thrive is because he has role players on the same defense he does doing their 111. So loved hearing that on Caden Curry. I saw you tweet on Logan Fano from Utah. Mm-hmm. Edge 6'5", 260. I want to give a shout out to EJ Holt. So when we did a Utah game preview, he mentioned we need to be talking about Logan Fano.
Yep.
I believe EJ said his floor is a designated pass rusher, but what do you see out of Logan Fano from Utah?
Yeah, let me get him real quick. So going into his film this year, like I knew who he was. Because he obviously by the last name you can tell Fano. He is the brother of Spencer Fano, the Utah right tackle. Spencer got injured this past weekend. It looked pretty bad, but we don't know what the extent of it is. A lot of people are talking about it looked like it could have been some sort of ligament damage. If it is, he may go back, or he may come out and just basically quote unquote redshirt his rookie year. Of course, we don't know, like I said, so we'll see. But that is his brother, and if he's healthy, he's basically the number one tackle, probably the number one tackle in this class. But like I said, going into it, like I said, I knew who he was, but I wasn't sure what I was going to get from him or see from him on the film. But I was actually pleasantly surprised from his film. I have him listed at 6'4", 249, so I'm not sure if that 260 is from the PFF or the Utah website offhand. I'm not sure if maybe they updated it. But the last time
I pull my heights and weights off of PFF. So while you're talking, I'm going to go look them up.
Yeah, I think he was 249 on the Utah website, but I could be wrong. But anyway, so yeah, he's a redshirt junior actually, and he actually started out at BYU, and then he transferred over, of course, Utah. But I saw that he transferred over basically when his brother went there. So it's one of those things. Sometimes you do see in recruiting with college, it's kind of a what do you call it? Unfortunate side to it to an extent where a school wants a big name player, big name recruit, a 5-star kid. They'll say like, hey, well, we'll take your brother, bring your brother, or even the brother's not that good. You know what I mean? But it happens. Or your best friend. We've seen it happens with the guys who are their quote unquote best friends. It happened with
Florida State.
Yeah, no,
the two defensive tackles, Farmer and Jackson Jr.
Well, no, I was thinking of now I'm forgetting his name. Notre Dame, the linebacker, that played for the Chargers. He had the fake girlfriend, Manti Te'o.
Monte Te'o.
Yeah. Like Notre Dame brought in his best friend, even though his best friend wasn't very good. But anyway, yeah. So anyway, I had him at 6'4", 249. He on film he does look a little bit smaller than that. I wouldn't say tiny, but I would say he looks 6'3", 240, 245 around there. But some interesting background, just like his brother, of course. They both have 4 uncles who actually played in the NFL, so they definitely have NFL bloodlines. Fano is this is his second year as a starter, but his build looks pretty solid. He does have some space to add weight to his frame. I was not a lot. I would say maybe 5-10 pounds. And his lower body does look a little thin, so I think if you could add some bulk to his lower body, that would help. His length looks solid, but not special. I would say around 33 inches, around there. But his explosion off the snap is pretty nice, actually. Not freaky or anything like that, or not, he's not, I don't think he's going to do a 45-inch vertical or anything like that, but it looks pretty nice. It looks pretty solid, probably mid-30s or something like that. But he looks pretty good on TE stunts. The looper, he builds up some pretty good momentum when he's coming around. He looks like he's too fast for some guards when he's doing that. He can hold the edge with a solid base in the run game. He's got good speed. He can work his way down the line as a backside defender. He's at times he's too strong and quick for some tight ends. He can dip and rip. He'll even use a chop and a dip. He does show some nice bend coming off the edge, but in the run game sometimes he will get engulfed a bit. He'll occasionally duck his head in the run game, so he needs to keep his head up course there. He ducks his head. They're gonna push pull him and knock him down and stuff like that. But it's one of those things with him as far as edge rushers. It's hard to quantify in specifics, but he's just kind of slippery. He's just one of those guys he's a slippery pass rusher. He's quick and he gets through things. His feet are quick and well coordinated. He, for not being a big guy, he handles a lot of snaps. And kind of like traditional Utah edge play or defensive players, he does a really good job of rallying to the ball. He's physical. He's a tackler. He's a good tackler. But the thing I noticed is I think he's still a little bit raw as a pass rusher. Most of his rushes, he tends to try and rush either inside or through the offensive tackle's face. Basically, he doesn't go outside a super lot. I think that's something he needs to add to his game. He needs to go more outside, especially being not like a really big edge rusher. I think that's going to help him, at least, especially in the NFL. He's going to be coming up against 320, 330 pound offensive tackles. You can't run through their face being sub 250. So he's gonna have to add more of an outside pass rush game to his plan. But he'll use a bull and a stab, and he gets some pretty good distance with his arms. He's able to separate from them. And then he'll try and kind of work back and forth with the offensive lineman to try and get free. But he can be a tick late sometimes on some RPOs, recognizing what's going on, whether the quarterback has it, the running back has it, and whatnot. But he has been used as a zone dropper. And then there was a few plays I even noticed with Utah is they had him on the edge and they dropped him way back, almost like to middle, like a middle linebacker. And they had him drop back into covering like a hook curl flat, which was and he looked pretty good doing it. Actually, I was surprised. I was like, okay. So that's something I think he can, again, adds versatility. He can incorporate it when it comes to the NFL. But when he's coming up at like running backs and tight ends and wide receivers, he does need to do a little better job of coming to balance when he's coming to attack them, to tackle them. I did notice that there's instances where he was just flying in there and he missed the tackle, or the running back kind of juked a little bit and he slipped past him, or the wide receiver or what have you. And even actually as a pass rusher too, there are a few times, especially even watching against Colorado this past year, where he had the quarterback dead to rights and he came in too fast, too quick, out of control, and then the quarterback was able to slip past him and he missed the sack. But also adding some counters to his game will be super important, again, since he's not a really big guy. But he does generally play with good pad level. His pads will rise on occasion, but it's not anything I'm concerned about. And then also just one more note, I think since this past weekend, he was listed with Utah with their announced with the seniors for their senior day. That's usually like I would say 90% indication that player is coming out if they still have eligibility left, and he still has eligibility left. He has 1 year left. So that means it's like a 90% likeliness that he does come out. But I think he should go back. Sometimes players will get announced with that and they will go back, but it's pretty rare, but it does happen. But as a player, I think he does need to go back because he still needs some more development as a pass rusher. He does show flashes. I don't think he's like they say is like a raw as like a clay, like a lump of clay or anything like that. But I do still think he needs some finishing and some work. But since he is likely coming out, I should say, I have a late day 2 grade on him. But I think he's one of those players that's going to go kind of late day 2. And his rookie year, he's basically going to be quote unquote like more of a redshirt player, where he's going to play special teams and play some snaps here and there on defense. But you're going to look for him to come out, and like year 2, year 3, kind of take off and just kind of develop his pass rush game and improve a little bit as a run blocker, run defender, and add some bulk to his frame and stuff like that. Because I think the talent is there.
Hearing that, I think you are the highest that I have heard on Logan Fano. Kind of thing. So, nearly every the one other podcast covered him, and they were more mid day 3 designated pass rusher. Okay. I want to emphasize the word designated pass rusher. That was like the first thing that came out of that group's mouth, is that his floor is a DPR. Do you agree that his floor is a DPR, or do you see him as an every down edge?
I mean, yeah, I think his floor could be DPR. I think if he adds, like I said, some bulk and some strength to his frame and improves against the run, he could maybe develop into a starter. I don't think he'd be like a high level starter or Pro Bowl or anything like that. But if he does add that stuff to his game, I think he could develop into like a decent, quote unquote, solid starter, okay starter type of thing.
Okay. And I did confirm. So I pulled the 6'5", 260 off of PFF. But again, like I try to be consistent with my measurements, but there's a reason I love podcasting with you, because in some ways you know more than PFF. Okay, so this is the first of the 2 Smiths that we're going to cover. So this is Tre Smith from Arizona, an edge. What do you have on Tre Smith?
Yeah, so for Tre, small note, just anybody watching, there's no relation. They're just same last name. So just in case, you never know. People think, oh, same last name, the same relation, but Yeah, no relation. Just and they both play in the state of Arizona, just at two different Arizona schools. So that's kind of also why I mentioned that. But anyway, for Tre, 6'4" and 3/8 verified, so basically 6'4.5", 253 with 33 and 5/8 inch arms. So some pretty long arms for not like a huge guy. He started out at San Jose State, and then he transferred over. So just quick note we mentioned before we started recording, he only played. Sorry, let me say that. He only played 4 games this year, and then he had an leg. Geez, I can't talk. Leg injury against Weber State, and so he's out for the year. I couldn't find the specifics on what the leg injury is, but I would assume it's an ACL, but I don't know for sure. He could have broke his leg or something like that, but I would assume ACL, PCL, MCL, something like that, some sort of ligament damage. So because he only played in 4 games this year, he could technically get a medical waiver and go back next year. It's obviously up to him if he wants to apply for that, because he is a redshirt senior. So we'll see with that. But he's been a starter since 2023, when he was at San Jose State. But he's got some decent build. He's got long arms. But his body does look a little top heavy, like most of his weight's kind of up his upper body. He doesn't look fat or anything, but it just looks like a lot of his weight's on his upper body. So of course, with that being said, his lower body is a little thin, but I think he might be better if he dropped a little bit of weight off his upper body. If he could work his midsection down a little bit, maybe it might give him a little more speed and agility or something like that, or not that, maybe bendability or flexibility or something like that. But yeah, his feet are always on the move. He plays pretty patient on backside plays. His explosiveness and speed are decent, but it's not really a standout thing. He does lack a second gear and a closing ability, but his ability to gear down and change direction quickly is lacking sometimes. So he has trouble changing direction and trouble making like quick stops. But his feet are well coordinated. He moves them well. He can cross face. He does show some power as a pass rusher, but it doesn't not really a standout thing. But he does have some legit pop in his hands against because he only had 4 games this year. So I also went back and watched a little bit of his 2024 film. In 2024, he actually there was a number of times where he actually went up against Spencer Fano and he popped him back a number of times. But the only thing that's kind of also a negative about that was Fano was able to recover. He wasn't able to like pop him back and then defeat him. But of course, Fano's like kind of a freaky athlete, so it's kind of like it's kind of is what it is type of thing. It's like, okay, I get it. It's okay. It's not that big of a deal. But his long arms do help with him getting separation against like blockers with shorter arms. He does try to use a chop, but the timing of it's a little off. He does it too soon, and the blocker kind of just knocks it away. He also tries a club, but that's not really very effective. I think that needs to improve. At times, Arizona does use him as almost like a 5-tech, but it looks like almost like, again, like it's like, like some sort of like NASCAR package type of thing, because he doesn't have the bulk to hold up there consistently. But he does have a stutter step and a juke move, which is pretty decent. He'll use his bull rush and he uses a long arm, but as a pass rusher, he doesn't get quick wins. It's kind of a slow burn pass rusher. He'll occasionally flash a quick jump off the snap, but it's not very often. But if he times it up, he'll get like a quick jump off the snap. His finishing ability is lacking. A lot of times as a pass rusher, he starts off good, but then he kind of gets bogged down or stuck or something like that. So his finishing needs to improve. He needs to develop some counters and stuff like that. But even though he gets stuck, he'll keep working. He'll keep pushing at it. He gives effort. He gets good hand placement in the run game, but he'll still get moved around a little bit. He doesn't have much of an anchor. I think his anchor needs to improve. But as a pass rusher, his hands could be better. A lot of times, sometimes he's grabbing like the outside of the blocker, the outside of the pads instead of like staying inside. So his block deconstruction is lacking. He needs to improve. Again, like I said, he doesn't show any counters or any combinations or stringing moves together or anything like that. He tries to spin, but it doesn't look very good. It doesn't look very quick. It doesn't look like it's a move that once he should keep using. I think he should just completely just like get rid of it, basically. But his best season, if you look at just watch his films, look at his numbers. His best season was 2023 at San Jose State when he's playing against a lot lesser competition. Especially when you watch his film versus his film at Arizona, and you can see it's likely a sign that he was just kind of a big fish in a small pond type of situation at San Jose. He gets most of his wins effort and physicality. But even when he was healthy this past year, he didn't play that great, which is going to hurt his stock. Of course, he only had, I think if you look at PFF, he only had I want to say like 4 pressures this year or something like that before he went out. And even again, his film wasn't that great either. So I think if he comes out this year, I think he's probably like a late day 3 pick. But again, I think if he can try and take a medical waiver and go back next year, that might help, even though it would give him basically a 6th year in college and he'd be a little bit older player coming out. But he could get healthy, improve and get healthy, improve his game a little bit, maybe we kind of rebuild his stock a little bit, because I think of the injury and the poor play this year is going to hurt his stock. Like I said, like a late day 3 pick. But if he goes back, maybe he can improve himself to like a mid day 3 pick.
Okay. The other Smith for today, Clayton Smith from Arizona State.
Let me pull him up real quick here. Look, Clayton Smith. Here we go. So he actually originally started out at Oklahoma. Verified measurements on him, 6'3" and 7/8, so basically 6'4", 240 with 32 and 3" arms. So with his background, it's kind of weird. He had like 6 starts in 2023, but then he was a full-time starter in 2024. But this year he's been a backup. I think he started 1 game this year, 2 games or something, but he's been basically a backup. So that's not good because he's a redshirt senior, and to lose your starting spot as a redshirt senior is not good. It looks bad. It looks bad on you as far as from NFL teams, because it's like, okay, well, what is he not doing? Because he started last year and this year's a backup now. He's on the smaller side. He has a thin build. He almost looks like kind of like a smaller linebacker. Again, it's only 240, so it looks like kind of like a smaller linebacker instead of an edge rusher. He lacks explosiveness or acceleration off the snap. He is willing to get like down and dirty in the game, in the run game, and the physicality and stuff, but he will get pushed around by offensive linemen. His balance is pretty good though. He's rarely on the ground. He's always trying to work his hands. His hand punch is pretty accurate. He does have some body bend. He can contort his body a little bit. Actually, I thought that was interesting and kind of surprising, because his ankle flexion is pretty average. I would say his flexibility is pretty average. His bend is average, I should say. He can dip a little bit, but it's not really a strength, I would say. But his hand timing can be a little bit off. He shoots his hands a little too early sometimes. He'll try to use his length, but since his arms are only kind of average, he doesn't get much separation from blockers. He does have a rip and swim move, which are okay. He'll chase and work his way down the line. He'll make some plays on some outside zone runs and stuff like that. And he can separate from some less athletic offensive linemen, but he has trouble against the longer, more NFL style offensive linemen. He doesn't have any pop in his hands. He'll throw a juke move out though. Generally, his football intelligence is pretty good, but he'll have occasional lapses here and there, but it's nothing too concerning. But when he hits guys with the pads, he's got some decent pop in his pads, but he doesn't have much of a pass rush plan or in his moves. He needs to work on counters and to bounce them out. On stunts, he's okay. He looks okay at stunts. He shows against some decent quickness when he's coming up against guards. And he's tried to bull rush a few times, but he doesn't get much with it. Since it's hard for a guy who's not even 245, for doing that. It's just hard for undersized edge rushers to make the NFL who don't have much speed or explosiveness, not much passing game, kind of average-ish bend. So I have a UDFA grade on him.
Okay, so big finish. So shout out to James Foster. He was the first person I saw this draft cycle discussing Quincy Rhodes from Arkansas. I know that he has another year of eligibility. Yep. 6'6", 275. But what do you have on Quincy Rhodes, and do you think he's 2026 or 2027?
Could go either way. So, like I said, he's listed at 6'6", 275. But he is kind of long and linear. He looks smaller. Of course, as most of us know, most college football teams list their guys taller than they actually are. So if he's 6'6", he's probably closer to 6'5", which is still good height and length and stuff like that. His length looks actually really good. I wouldn't be surprised if he comes in close to 35-inch arms. So obviously that's an advantage. That's a plus. He doesn't look 275 to me on film, To me, he looks 255, 260-ish. We'll see if he does come out what his weight is, but he does look thinner than he's listed. But he can pack a punch when he's taking on like blockers, fullbacks, tight ends, the smaller guys. His closing speed is pretty impressive for his size. He's got a stab move that's okay, but it does need to improve. It does need to improve. And then if he improves that, I think that would help with his speed to power. He's got a pretty decent speed to power as well. He even tries to throw out a Euro step. Actually, it looks okay. It shows needs to be a little more developed, but it does show some potential. It could be a pretty good go-to move. He has he also has tried to use a spin, which is pretty surprising for a guy that big. But and he tried pairing it with an outside. He has paired with an outside fake. But it needs some work. But it does look like again another move that has some potential. It did cause the blockers a few times to kind of stumble and stuff like that. So again, there's some potential there. It's not like a finished move and a already move, but it needs some work. But there's some potential there. He'll use a bull rush. He'll get some good movement with that. His rip is actually pretty good. He's a pretty good rip. He's physical and he'll work himself free in the run game. So he's a pretty good run defender. Again, for how big he is, he's pretty bendy. He's got some really good ankle flexion and bend for a guy that's that big. And then he's fast and he can really accelerate quickly. Can cause havoc in the backfield and especially as like a looper on a stunts. He looks pretty good with that. He doesn't use working his length and his power when doing that, when coming around when he's looping. It does come off the snap pretty low for a guy that tall, but his pads will kind of rise up throughout the play sometimes, and then he'll kind of get ridden out of that play when that happens. RPOs is a slight hitch on him reading RPOs and recognizing RPOs and stuff like that. So I think he needs to speed that up and kind of get a little bit of recognizing those. There were a few times, it wasn't a lot, but I felt I didn't notice there were a few times where his effort could be a little bit better at the end of a play. There were a few plays here and there. It wasn't, again, like I said, it wasn't a lot, but where he had kind of towards the end of the play, he kind of seemed to kind of let up, and you like to see him get a little more effort. But he does show flashes of being able to chase down plays and off the line of scrimmage. His stacking and shedding and like block deconstructor could be a little bit better. He'll get stuck sometimes on blockers. They've dropped him in coverage a few times. Spot dropped him. He doesn't look comfortable doing it. Doesn't look like he's a really guy who moves well, dropping back and stuff like that. So I don't think that's something he's going to be asked to do in the NFL. Really, he looks a little stiff doing it. But he's got a little bit of an inside outside fake, which will get some blockers leaning one way and the other. Then he'll kind of cut back the other way. When he swims, he uses a swim move. And he uses his length on that pretty good. But again, he's a 1-year starter. Actually, I forgot to mention that earlier. But this is his first year as a starter. And sometimes he'll let blockers with his chest a little too much. I think he has like first round talent, but he's not there yet. Of course, again, like I said, he's only a 1-year starter, and he didn't play. He barely played coming into this year. I think last year he played the most, and he didn't play much last year, and the year before he basically didn't play at all. So I think he should go back because I think he could develop to a first round pick. But I think if he did come out this year, I have like a mid day 2 pick on him. So like kind of like a late second, early third.
Okay. Love it on Quincy Rhodes. Definitely a player as we approach, I believe the deadline is like January 6th for underclassmen to declare. Definitely a player to watch as we hit the first of the year. Okay, so this is the first time we have covered Jay-Sean Barham for scouting reports. Funny story. I had him in with the linebacker group, and I had everybody agree at the beginning of scouting reports that, yeah, we should cover him with the linebacker group. Then the week before the linebacker group was going to cover him, no, we want to cover Trotter. Let's remove Barham from the show. So, basically, Brian and the Edge group got stuck with Barham. That's just the story. But he played linebacker his first few years at Michigan. He is playing more edge now. Tell us what you think of Jay-Sean Barham, the NFL prospect, and what you think his best NFL position is. Yeah,
so he actually started out at Maryland I'm trying to remember because he's been in my database since I think he was a freshman. Or like middle part of his freshman year or something like that. As a freshman at Maryland, they had him play a little bit of both. They had him play a little bit of well, I wouldn't say they played him edge rusher. They would play him more kind of like a blitzing linebacker at times. But he was a linebacker. He's been a starter since he was a freshman. Like I said, as a freshman, he kind of played like linebacker / like what would I like kind of like a rushing blitzing linebacker, I guess I would call it. I wouldn't really call it an edge rusher, but they had him blitz a lot. And then his sophomore year, he played kind of more just true linebacker, and then he transferred to Michigan last year, and he played more true linebacker. And then again this year, the first I think 3 games he played linebacker, and then after that he got moved to edge. So he's been playing edge since like game 3 of this year. Verified measurements on him: 6'3", 241, with 33-inch arms. Again, he's a 4-year starter, so that's obviously tons of experience. And if the NFL or team saw him as a linebacker, that he'd be like kind of like your more bigger, physical kind of 2-down linebacker. If the NFL team saw him as that, he is muscular. He's got a well-built body, but he's got some thin calves. But as an edge rusher, he's fast. He can get around the arc pretty quickly. He has some really nice bend around the edge. Not freaky bend, but pretty close up there, I would say. He can his how do you call it? His pad level could be a little bit better coming off the snap. That would help him with his power, developing his power, come off a little bit lower, give him a little better leverage. So he's got okay size for an edge rusher, but of course he could stand to add, probably like 10 more pounds. And his body looks like he can handle it without really losing any athleticism. And I believe actually he's been heavier. I think that he just dropped weight this past season because I think he thought he was going to stay at linebacker, so he dropped weight, but then they moved him to edge, so it was kind of too late to add more weight. Because I believe he's played at 250 before. But he's got good anchor against the run game. He'll use a rip, but the way he used, I'm trying to think how to explain it. The way he's using is a little bit wrong. Because he's coming at like straight ahead at the opposite line. He's trying to rip instead of trying to come to the side, and so he needs to do that. And then he's also used a dip does pretty well. But he will use the speed in his bend. But he doesn't use the rip with the speed and the bend. I think he should add the rip to the speed and the bend. I think that would help. But he's got really good balance. He does a good job staying on his feet, even though he's barely a little over 240 right now. He's an aggressive player that could at times, I think, learn to be a little more patient at times. I think he tries himself out of plays sometimes, occasionally, trying to just really get back there and be aggressive and trying to make a play. But he will use an outside fake. He flashes actually pretty nice hard inside fake. It's pretty nice. It looks good. But again, like I said, with the patience, he'll crash a little hard on the run game. Sometimes he'll come a little out of control with his head down and stuff like that. And of course, as an edge rusher, when they asked him to zone drop, he looked okay doing it. Of course, that's, from his background as a linebacker. So zone dropping, he looks okay doing it. Not great, but he looks okay doing it. But he doesn't let himself stay blocked. He continues to work trying to get off the blockers. Again, he does need to develop some counters when his initial move is stopped. At times, I noticed it's kind of funny. He'll take on blockers at times, almost like a linebacker sometimes. He'll kind of just throw his shoulder at them instead of trying to stop them and get off them and hold his gap and stuff like that. Because if you're throwing your shoulder at them, you're basically kind of losing your gap in a way. Because then you're throwing your shoulder at them, they can if there's like a running back coming, he can kind of cut around you and stuff like that. So I think he needs to learn to play the run more as edge rusher. And he does need to learn to improve at stacking and shedding. And then occasionally he'll show some power in his hands. Has some nice speed to power, though, when he's able to drive off the lineman back into the quarterback. And able to work on. He's also able to work on line of scrimmage, even with blockers hanging onto him. So he's got some good explosiveness and speed and balance to just keep working in those blockers, but basically not affect him. And I think he's definitely a developmental prospect as an edge rusher. He may not be for every team since he is a little undersized, although like I said, he can add some weight. But with some good workouts, and if he goes to all-star games and he shows some improvement in all-star games with his pass rush moves, shows he can add some weight, stuff like that, improvement, stuff like that. I think he could be, I think he can go in I have a 3rd round grade on him right now. And I think if he really blows up the all-star circuit, he could go even higher.
Okay. I love hearing that. If a team wanted to draft him, so okay, I'm a Bills fan. Buffalo has scouted Michigan historically somewhere between frequently and a lot. If Buffalo wanted to use him as an off-ball linebacker on first and second down, and then move him to edge and pass rushing downs, do you think that that's what his profile is? Or do you think it's better if he has one position and then that's what he trains for?
I think it's better if he focuses on one position. I mean, you could do that with him in the NFL, but I think because he's been kind of back and forth a bit in college, he hasn't really developed as a, how do I put it? He hasn't had the development as a true edge rusher. And I think even, or like I said early on at Maryland, they kind of had him do a little bit of both. So he really has 2 years playing true linebacker. But I think, like I said, I think you could do that if you wanted to use him as like a stack linebacker for a second down, have him come off the edge. But I think for the long term of his, how do I play it? How do I say it? To get the most out of him, I should say, I think you probably want to put him just as an edge rusher, and then put him as an edge rusher, and then maybe occasionally just to throw something at the offense, throw some variety at them, then play a little bit of linebacker here and there. But I think mostly use him as edge rusher.
Okay. So that concludes the list of players we were going to go through today. So the list for next week includes Dominique Orange, otherwise known as Big Citrus from Iowa State, Trey Moore from Texas, Romello Height from Texas Tech, Max Llewellyn from Iowa, Abu Jayod from UNC. How did I do with that name?
I think I haven't looked into how it's supposed to be pronounced, but
yeah. So that was a name that you had dropped into the chat. We can definitely cover him next week.
And actually, sorry, I forgot to mention that. Sorry, I'm going to mention that's not his full name. That's just actually his last name. I thought you were going to look him up, so I thought you knew. Sorry, it's actually
not a problem.
Yeah, it's Melkart is his first name. Melkart. Melkart is his first name, but so it's Melkart Abu Jadore. Anyway, go ahead. Sorry.
Okay, and then Chris McClellan from Missouri, Aaron Grace from Iowa, James Smith from Alabama, and then 2 SMU players, Cam Robertson from SMU and Isaiah Smith from SMU. And I know Brian will be here next week.
Yep.
Drew is definitely out. And then Jack told me he was going to miss 2 weeks. I think it was last week and this week, but
yep.
I will verify with Jack. Do you have time to do a couple of Packers mock drafts?
No, because I think it took a little longer to get to those guys than I thought. So
no problem.
I wish I did, but...
No problem. So why don't you let everybody know about your draft content, and then we will close the podcast down.
Yeah, of course, for those watching on YouTube, you can see my Twitter handle there. For those not even listening, just audio, it's BMAAFI NFL. You can find me that's where I'm at. Always posting draft stuff. I post clips at times too, talking about different players. What else? You can catch me on, if you're a Packers fan, you can catch me on the Cheesehead TV draft guide. Usually every year. We'll see. I haven't heard from them yet. Of course, it's a little bit early. Usually I'll hear something in December probably from them or January. But yeah, you catch me in there. I usually do a positional breakdown on players that the Packers won't draft because they don't fit their thresholds and that type of stuff. I also have a Substack. You can just find it with my name, Brian Maffey. And I do a weekly kind of a stock up, stock down type of article, and I'll do a little bit of just general what's going on in college football stuff, like position, like rankings, and just like interesting wins and losses and stuff like that. And I think that's about it.
Okay. Well, good morning, everybody. Welcome to the Draft Professor. This is our first show on Sunday morning. We actually have another show that starts in 25 minutes. And we're here every day. Weeknights at 7 p.m. Eastern, 9 p.m. Eastern. We have a show Saturday morning. We have 2 shows on Sunday morning. And once we hit January, we definitely will have a slight change in the Sunday lineup because we definitely have some very popular draft personalities that will be podcasting with us on Sunday mornings starting in January. What you get at Draft Professor is daily draft content. What you get is unique draft content. We attempt to cover every player drafted in rounds 1 through 5. When we do that, you also get some UDFA. So Brian had a undrafted grade on one of the players we covered today. Yep. So, as we're hunting for players, one person's treasure of a 4th or 5th round pick, maybe somebody else's UDFA. So that's just kind of how the channel goes. So we will definitely cover the draft thoroughly. And we're not just presenting a big board. We're presenting, detailed information on the players in the draft cycle. So we have 110 people at the Draft Professor, and you'll see about 30 of them on our podcasts every week. So for Brian Maffey, myself, for the 110 people at the Draft Professor, thank you so much for tuning in. Enjoy your Sunday, and we'll see you on a podcast again in 25 minutes. Thank you, everybody.
See you.